So today, I, Lawrence Basilio, together with my partner Prince Josh Santos, will be reporting about Bertrand Russell's The Value of Philosophy. Next, please.
So about the essay, The Value of Philosophy is the last chapter of the 1912 book, The Problems of Philosophy by Bertrand Russell. So as the title implies, it is about problems of philosophy. So what's in 1912? So basically, it is when the theory of relativity by Einstein was published, and Bertrand Russell wanted to enlighten and remind himself and other philosophers about its value. And I think we don't need a degree to understand this essay, and we also don't need a degree to understand the value of philosophy. Next slide.
So, after knowing a brief background information about the essay, well, let's talk about Bertrand Russell. He was born in May 18, 1872, and died on February 2, 1970, both in United Kingdom. Next, please. So Bertrand Russell is a British philosopher, logician, mathematician, historian, writer, social critic, political activist, and a Nobel laureate. Next, please. So to know more about the author, let's learn some of his notable quotes. Some of those are related in philosophy, and some just about random things in life. First is the trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure and the intelligent are full of doubt. Next, these two are closely related. It states here that the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people so full of doubt. So, as mentioned by my partner earlier, the essay was written during the time or the era where science was the center, or the general public is under the influence of science, and then it's doubting what the value of philosophy is. So, these are some of maybe the general statements mentioned by Bertrand Russell, which sticks to his ideology about how valuable philosophy can be. Next, please. The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge. So, knowledge will be mentioned in this report, which tells us more about how philosophy is and its aims. Next, please.
So for the fourth quote, we have most people would sooner die than think. In fact, they do so. So in relation to that, to conquer fear is the beginning of wisdom. In fact, Socrates mentioned wisdom is knowing that you don't know anything, and in this in a in philosophy we need to approach this um in a curious way, or like we need to acknowledge what we don't know, that we don't really know anything in this world. So don't fear to be eccentric in opinion, for every opinion now accepted was once eccentric. So in fact, in ancient Greek, they only used logic and reasoning just to provide evidences, or defend their arguments to explain natural phenomena. And later on, we understand that these concepts were true and accepted naman. So for the next slide,
Yes, actually, that is very true. Some philosophers back in the days were even called crazy, right? Another quote by Bertrand Russell is, I would never die for my beliefs because I might be wrong. So this shows one of his characteristics as a philosopher, don't you think? Uh, as will be mentioned in the future discussions, philosophy does not necessarily gives you definitive answers. So instead, because of his deeper understanding about what philosophy can be, he knows that he might be wrong. Next, please.
the last quote is, there is much pleasure to be gained from useless knowledge. We might think that the value of or understanding philosophy is insignificant, but in fact it benefits our mind, and it shows a bigger picture, or the bigger reality. And outside of science, and outside the influence of science, my deeper sense of meaning, or like my meaningful life out there. So for the next slide, we have what is the value of philosophy according to Russell? Lawrence, please.
So many of you might be thinking, again, this question, what is philosophy? We were mentioning this even in the first slides. So what is the value of philosophy? Why is it ought to be studied? Actually, according to Russell, it is necessary to consider this question. But then, let me stop you first because let's establish this context. Consider that these questions are in a view of people under the influence of science or practical affairs, which doubt philosophy. So during those times, as mentioned earlier, the general public are science centric or rely on science more. And naniniwala pa na to see is to believe and other different quotations. So based on this reading, there is this view that describes as that philosophy is a useless trifling, it is impossible or it concerns nothing about the knowledge. But then we all know that this is a wrong conception. Next slide, please. What caused this ideology? We all know that this view is a wrong misconception, but this is due to wrong deception of the ends of life and wrong conception of the goods of philosophy. So many people during those times failed to see what kind of goods or the benefit that philosophy strives to achieve. It is even mentioned that if the study of philosophy has any value at all for others, then students of philosophy, it must only be indirectly through its effect upon the lives of those who study it. It means that those people who tends and doubts it in the first place and have this stereotypical mind about what philosophy is and already neglecting it cannot uh, appreciate its true value. Next, please. Russell stated that science is useful for inventions and effect on mankind. So as you can see, he even stated how important science is. But then he also mentioned how utility does not belong to philosophy. The value of philosophy, according to the Russell, is indirect. It is in these effects that the value of philosophy must be primarily sought. But then, what about ethics and logic, Prince?
So, in my opinion, I disagree with this statement. No, the value of philosophy is indirect, but in fact, logic is used in ancient Greek to provide logic and reasoning to provide explanation or to the arguments regarding the explanation of natural phenomena and like science in general. So it is in fact the prototype of science, logic and reasoning. So how about ethics? So ethics is primarily used in a court. So let's say there's a drug lord and he offered the lawyer millions of dollars. Then um, the lawyer is in the situation where he can choose to be ethical or not. So ethics is ethics has a practical application in today's society. So that's all for this question. Let's proceed to the next slide.
So, in this next slide, Russell stated that those misconceptions and views are of the practical man. So, what is a practical man? According to the readings, a practical man is someone who recognizes only material needs, but then is oblivious of the necessity of providing food for the mind. This goods of the mind that is mentioned is where we can found the true value of philosophy. And practical man are those people who are indifferent about these goods and almost impossible to be persuaded about what philosophy can be. Next, please.
So who is this practical man according to Russell? So even if most people were well off in the world, there will still remain much to be done to produce a valuable society. So according to Russell, his claims are Lawrence.
First, philosophy aims at knowledge that unifies sciences. So this knowledge are of the grounds of convictions. But then philosophy has not had success in its attempts to provide definitive answers because, as stated in the readings, philosophy uh, enlarges what we can understand about the questions and focuses on deeper understanding about the questions and does not immediately give us what the answer might be. The knowledge that philosophy aims is the kind of knowledge which results from a critical examination of the grounds of prejudices, and beliefs. So, seemingly, there is this uncertainty that we can found in philosophy. And then those questions that we have may be capable of definite answers, which is provided by the sciences, but those with no definite answer remain to be a part of what philosophy truly can be. These questions, among the profoundest interests of what we have, are remains to be incomprehensible to the human intellect and should be continued to be understood with philosophy. Next, please.
We have here, we are men of science, and the man of science is a poor philosopher. So if we ask a historian, a mineralogist, a mathematician, or a scientist, what do? They assert. They won't hesitate to provide us answers. So when we ask, on the other hand, if we ask a philosopher, they don't really know the answer, and they will confess that their study did not achieve positive results, but in the sense that the question um, was excavated to its full length. So, and in this part, we're gonna discuss about our major takeaways in this essay. So, philosophy gives birth to sciences, um, in the sense that they establish, philosophy established uh, the knowledge or the wisdom, and we can in the essay, Russell mentioned about the self and non-self. So the self pertains to the philosopher. We are the philosophers, and the non-self pertains to the object of curiosity. For the next takeaway, Lawrence, please.
So, the uncertainty of philosophy as a virtue rather than a vice. Uncertainty makes you ask. Also, it makes you start from acknowledging that we do not know. So, in fact, the value of philosophy can be largely sought in its uncertainty. So, kanina na-mention na walang definitive answer, baka walang sagot, nasa question yan. But that's the beauty of it. That's what makes philosophy valuable. It's uncertainty. You know, like, uh, as soon as we philosophize, we saw this opening, seemingly a new perspective. The uncertainty gives us this okay, our knowledge should be neglected, should not be biased, and will give us more room and maybe will give us incomplete answers, but then enlarges what our perception can be. So, philosophy, in this sense, though unable to tell us what, with certainty what is the true answer and raises doubts instead, suggests many possibilities and widens our perspective and freedom from stereotypes or what the custom might be. Next, please. We should not be dogmatic. So, what is dogmatic? It is characterized or given by the expression that something is very positive, that it is right or wrong. I think this is one of the main key takeaways from this essay that there in this world we can say that this is true, this is not, but that can be relative. We have no one to go to and say, oh, tama yan, oh, totoo yan. We should enrich our intellectual imagination, remove and prevent any dogmatic assurance that makes us close minded, instead, open our minds and speculate. spectate, because uh, the greatness of the universe can be contemplated by us through philosophy, which will make our minds greater, uh, with enlarged understanding and deeper observation and perspective about the world in its entirety. Next, please.
Philosophy is neutral, no color, no race, and no upbringing. Philosophy makes the mind impartial. So there are trillions of stars out there, and we don't need to worry about the color or nor race, and like we don't need to discriminate people, and we are all part of this universe. So what what do we need to do? Syempre, study philosophy, and philosophy makes the mind impartial. So we're not entirely sure about the universe, and we're not entirely sure that tama yung pinanghawakan natin na truths, di ba? So for the last takeaway,
So, just one, uh, enlargement of the self and the soul. So maybe some of you have read this term called philosophic contemplation in the readings. So apart from giving us uncertainty, philosophy gives us this uh, unsuspected possibilities, different things that we might not expect. So one of its chief value is through the greatness of contemplation. So it frees us from being a narrow mind and from what we think that we can perceive. It gives us a bigger perspective and large and widen uh, thought processes from the contemplation. So parang sinasabi ng text na binasa natin na we are in the circle. Maybe the society, I don't know. We are enclosed or boxed within different contexts, different concepts, different rules that we should abide in or so. But then this circle parang narrows what we can see. So with philosophic contemplation, first it will enlarge yourself. You know, yung hindi lang yung circle natin sa friends, hindi lang sa family, sa mga kakilala natin, or to those people na nagbe-benefit yung ating interest. With contemplation, it will enlarge yourself and see the world with a bigger perspective. And of course, it will enlarge the soul. So, as mentioned, philosophy has this value for the goods of the mind, which keeps us or hinders removing us from any hindrances that are stereotypes or whatever prejudices that we have. So, uh, as an addition to what my partner said, this does not mean that philosophy, at its very core, separates people. It does not separate scientific people to philosopher. It does not separate you from your friends or your foes or your families. Or there's not philosophy does not separate. Okay, this is the good. This is the bad. Instead, it views uh, the entirety of it, the enlargement of it. It views the whole impartially, as was mentioned earlier. So, in its very sense, that's what the value of philosophy is. After all of this discussion about what the essay value of philosophy gives us, in your own personal view, Prince, what is the value of philosophy?
I think I just need to summarize yung sinabi mo, no? So enlargement of the soul and society and self and the soul. So first, ang takeaway ko dito, philosophy arouses our curiosity. So may nabanggit dito yung non-self, which is yung object of curiosity natin, and yung self is tayo, philosophers. So, and yung sinabi mo rin na it gives us freedom from prejudice and selfishness. So, hindi tayo parang impartial tayo sa lahat ng bagay. We're not entirely sure about the truth that we uphold to. So, and like, just a reminder, sa pag-practice or like sa value of philosophy, we need to engage with the world with humility. So, hindi dapat tayo mag-assert ng certain statements kapag nag-aaral tayo ng philosophy. So um there's we have to believe na there's a mind larger than our own, na hindi lang parang tayo yung parang ini-eliminate or in-eradicate natin yung egoistic na thinking. And
Okay.
we, and Lawrence, siguro may add ka pa, 'di ba, for this closing statement.
So for me, yung pinaka-takeaway ko lang talaga, personally, mahirap ang philosophy. It's very,
Totoo 'yan.
like, you have this question, hindi ka niya bibigyan ng sagot. Bibigyan ka pa niya ng tanong, ng tanong,
Tanong, tanong,
ng
tanong.
tanong. Pero,
Exponential na tanong eh, no?
that is the beauty of it and what makes it valuable. It makes us critical about ourselves. It makes us reflect. You know, hindi lang siya nag-establish ng truth, hindi lang siya nag-unify knowledge, sciences, or contemplation. It makes us critical about things. And I think it is very important na maging tayong critical, especially nowadays, because it is not only about you. You know, you need to have a wider perspective, which philosophy would actually give you. And at the end of the day, you might not have the answers. It might be incomplete. You might not be sure is it true, is it not, is this the right course. But philosophy will give you this enlightenment and it will open your eyes in a different and bigger chapter that you've never seen before. Thank
So,
you.
thank you everyone for listening and watching this short recorded video, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Bye bye.
Bye.